What is the name of our show?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Large Glass. I'm Todd.
I'm Terri.
It's nice to see all of you. We are back again for another week of bringing you some cool art.
We are.
What are we on? Episode what?
30.
I knew you wanted to say that. So,
It's a milestone.
it is a milestone.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. You were doing the whole numerology thing in the newsletter.
Uh-huh.
Is it numerology?
It's numerology.
Yeah.
It's a very, very creative number.
We're on episode 30.
On the 30th of March.
On the 30th of March.
Mm-hmm.
And you said we were going to do 30 artists.
Yep, we're going to do 30 artists.
We're absolutely not going to do 30 artists tonight.
Yeah,
but there's
time.
Mom, there's Pumpkin Audrey, there's
Hello.
Ben.
Hi.
Nice to see all of you. Thanks for coming. We got a cool show tonight. We have a ton on our plate tonight.
A lot. Yeah.
So rather than 30 artists, it feels like we have 30 pounds of material.
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Just looking at that big board you got going on there,
I
too.
know the board gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Uh-huh.
So we got some really cool things to talk about in the news tonight. And it's news about us, which you don't even know.
Surprise!
Surprise!
All right.
Comcast Cable picked up our show. We're going.
Oh.
I'm just joking. That would be
pretty rad.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. So, why don't we start with our drinks?
Okay.
Would you like to do that?
Sure.
So tonight's artists hail from a couple of different places, right? So we've got a Dutch painter.
Yes.
We've got a Spanish painter.
We do.
And the Dutch painter primarily was in Paris.
Yes, he spent a lot of time in France.
So we have tonight the Campo Viejo Rioja, which is going to really react with my green screen kind of funny because it doesn't really look like that. Looks like my bottle's invisible. Look. That's cool.
That's cool.
That's fun. And then we've got the Monsieur Touton, the Sauvignon. Anybody? We got some people showing up in the... So we are broadcasting across multiple platforms tonight again. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. And if you happen to be hanging out on Facebook, why don't you come on over to Twitch? The channel is twitch.tv/toddlambrix, all one word. And it's free. It is free. It is not something that you have to pay for. Mom is drinking water. Amy Goldstein is here, and she's in Seattle. I don't understand why this thing keeps saying new message. Sunny evening in Seattle.
Ooh,
nice to see you.
Nice.
Ben's drinking water. Pumpkin Audrey's got a Sauvignon Blanc.
A lot of water.
I finally got that Rioja open. So should we do a little ASMR?
Why, yes, we should.
All right, let's do some of that. Hold on a minute. I got to crank the gain. I'm going to wind up with some feedback. There's Carolyn Thau. I have to whisper Carolyn because I'll blow out the microphone. Nice to see you all. I think that moment required some headphones, honestly. And
Yeah.
let's turn the gain down so I don't kill anybody.
Okay.
All right, we're back to normal.
All
Good.
right.
So...
Ben says, wow.
Wow, right? If you have headphones on, that was probably rather enjoyable.
Yeah.
Let me give you a little bit of a smidge here.
And Dave is here. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Dave. Nice to see you. We got a lot going on the... I'm going to have to keep clicking this button on the Restream chat because it keeps... Hey, happy 30.
Happy 30.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to all of you. Thanks for hanging out with us for 30 episodes.
30
this is like
episodes.
6 months.
Yeah. That's 30 hours. Over 30 hours.
Oh, way more than 30 hours.
Talking.
I think you're talking about me there because I talk too much.
No.
You are. It's
No.
okay. So I went back and looked at episode 1.
Cheers.
Cheers. I think we did that. I didn't drink.
I didn't either.
Ooh, that's got some nice. It's got some nice weight to it.
Does it?
Yeah. Very rich, black fruits, nice and dry.
Oh, yummy.
Good. All right. So let's see. Ben's got us on the TV.
Oh, wow.
We got some news to put up first, and I think we should probably pop right over to some of the brief art news. I think this is actually pretty exciting. You got home late, so I didn't get a chance to really talk to you about it, so I'm just going to talk as if I did talk to you about it, if that's okay with you. So Let's see. Where do we go from here? Let's grab. Oh, that is not what's supposed to be up there.
Very nice.
Yeah. Well, now you know what we're doing,
Ooh.
which is totally fine, right? But hold on a second. Let's get rid of that momentarily. And, oh, shoot. Okay. We're having technical difficulties. Hold on 1 second. All right. That should work now. Boom, boom, and boom. Nothing's working for me.
Nothing's working.
Nothing's working. Hello,
Yes.
lovely
Hey,
people.
Christina.
Christina's here. Nice to see you. Christina, thank you for the painting.
Yes.
I don't know
that
if I
was
should
such a
announce that on the
fantastic
air, but
surprise.
that was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Something is wrong with my Stream Deck, and I don't know what it is. It's going to take me a minute to fix though, so
Pumpkin Audrey
please.
saying Van Gogh. Yes, we're
Please
going to
bear
get
with
there in
me.
a few moments.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot to talk to you about before we get to Van Gogh and before we get to Goya. But I would love it if this thing would work, and it's not working.
Do you think we could do a reboot?
I'm not going to do a reboot because we're currently streaming and everything is good. But for some reason, Stream Deck is dead. It died. So for those of you who are thinking about streaming in the near
something
future,
happened.
no, it didn't.
Oh.
If you're thinking about streaming in the near future and acquiring an Elgato Stream Deck, I highly recommend it. However, if you're using it with a Mac, it is quirky.
Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Nice to see you.
And Christina says, thank you for the flowers. You're so welcome. That was our pleasure.
No, that was absolutely our pleasure. I loved doing that.
Yeah.
I do not understand what is going on here. Normally, these things are all behaving nicely, and all I have to do is click on all of these, and it usually comes right back. But it is not. All right, I'm going to have to do this manually. I apologize, but let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of... Oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare.
This way you get to kind of see what the process is like.
No,
when,
they're just like, oh
we're
my God, I wish
setting it
these guys
up.
would get their act together.
No, that's not true.
All right, let's see if this part works. Yeah, Stream Deck has crashed and nothing is working.
Oh, wow. I don't think that's ever happened.
That's never happened before.
Huh.
There it goes. There it
Ooh.
goes. Quirky. All right, so
But what a gorgeous shot.
Isn't that a
That
nice
was
shot?
like a real build up to it.
that's
Yeah.
not my shot. I didn't take that shot. That's a really nice picture of the Hunterdon Art Museum in Clinton, New Jersey. So to get on with the bloody news, finally, the Hunterdon Art Museum in Clinton, New Jersey is joining forces with the Hunterdon Art Tour. And we were asked, as I've mentioned on the show before, we were asked to help MC and host that whole weekend-long event, which is really kind of awesome. So one of the things we had to cover was the Hunterdon Art Museum usually does a big reception on the Friday night before the weekend of the tour. There's hundreds of people that show up for this show. There's an exhibition in the museum of all the artists on the tour. It's a great time, a lot of speakers, a lot of map handing out for the next day, and you get to see who you want to go see.
Okay.
So obviously we're not going to have a crowded building with 400 people in it doing a reception this year. But you and I are going to be in the Hunterdon Art Museum alone with the work hanging there, hosting the show from a Zoom meeting. All of the artists in the show will be in that Zoom meeting. And then all of the artists that are not only in the show, but on the tour will be present in that meeting. We're going to have the live chat. We're going to have some guest speakers, and we're going to kick off the weekend with a bang in conjunction with the Hunterdon Art Museum and the Hunterdon Art Tour. So I think that's really cool.
That's really cool.
I'm really excited about that.
That's really awesome.
So looking forward to that. Now that takes place on April 30th. That's a Friday evening. We don't have the exact time yet. That's still to be determined. My guess is it's sometime between 6 and 8 o'clock. But stay tuned for that. That's Eastern time. And then, of course, the tour itself is on Saturday, May 1st and Sunday, May 2nd. So if you're out this way in New Jersey, you can, of course, get a map and go see people oftentimes on a scheduled basis or an appointment basis. But you can also do it virtually through us because we're actually going to be hosting.
Yeah.
So you can come see it through us. All right, I'm almost afraid to touch this button because I want to see if this whole thing shuts down. And it does. That was good.
Okay.
That's what I wanted.
That's what you wanted?
That was supposed to happen.
Okay. That's good then.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. Let's do. So tonight's show is heavily based on birthdays.
It is.
And we have a lot of birthdays to do.
We do have a lot of birthdays to do.
And in the spirit of my constant technical glitches and things, I'm going to guess that when I open up this, it's going to be on the wrong slide. It is on the wrong slide. But
That's a good slide. I like that one.
I kind of did it on purpose.
Are we going in reverse?
We're not going in reverse. Because if we went, well, going in reverse would be a good thing. But we're skipping the two artists that have birthdays today.
Yes, we are.
Because we're going to be talking about them later.
Okay. Well, do you want me to start with this one?
No, I want to start
Okay.
with this one.
Oh.
So we've got birthdays this week, and one birthday happens to be of my very favorite painter on earth. Yours true, or I should say, not yours truly, but you.
Oh my
Happy
gosh.
birthday.
Thank you.
You're like, I'm going to kill you.
Thanks.
Tomorrow's Terry's birthday.
Yes.
So we're all excited. March 31st.
Yep.
So our first artist's birthday is tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, so everybody's saying happy birthday to you in the chat, which is nice. All right, so can I go to the next one?
Yes.
You're like, please do.
You sure can.
You're like, now, go to the next one
Thank
now.
you, everybody. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Next birthday.
Dan Flavin?
It's Flavin, but some people say Flavin.
I do say Flavin. I think I've heard it pronounced Flavin
I have
too.
to.
Okay.
Yeah, I say tomato, you say tomato.
Okay. Well, he is an April Fool's baby. He was born on April 1st, 1933. He's an American minimalist. He's mostly known for his sculptures involving fluorescent lighting.
Yep.
And installations involving this too. So
happy birthday, Dan.
happy birthday, Dan.
All right, so our next artist is Mr. Bill Traylor. He's also April 1st, and I love this guy's work. He's totally like one of the most awesome primitive folk artists you're ever going to want to see. And I have a feeling we're going to wind up doing a show on him when we do a primitive art show. I definitely want to include him.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet.
We could do a whole show around this guy all by himself. We really don't even need to dice it up with other people. Yeah, but his work is just fabulous. And he's left us. He's no longer here, but he is.
He died pretty recently too, didn't he? The past couple of years, or am I wrong about that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I have to look that up.
For some reason I was thinking that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I have to look that up. Mom's into the primitives. Everybody's saying happy birthday. Mom says it. Amy says it.
Thank you.
I hate username 67. Who happened to follow today? Thanks for that follow, pal. He says happy birthday. Carolyn Thau says it.
You.
Christina says it.
Thanks.
John Park says it. Pumpkin Audrey says it. It's going right up the list here. Nice active chat.
Thank you very much.
All right, next birthday. Who do we got here? Oh, I forgot to put Bill. This is not Bill Traylor. I forgot to hit the button for Bill Traylor. This happens to be Max Ernst.
Max Ernst, and he was born on the 2nd
Yes.
of April, 1891, German painter, sculptor, graphic artist. He's one of the pioneers or the founding fathers of the Dada movement.
Yep.
And
He was also connected to surrealism. Yep.
And so that's it. His birthday is on the 2nd of April.
Yes. Moving on. Next in line, we have Mr. Charles White. Charles White was a fantastic artist who often depicted scenes of African-American life in the United States. He worked in pencil, graphite, paint, murals, printmaking, a whole bunch of media across the board. And his works are actually really quite beautiful. So if you don't know his work, definitely check it out. He is also no longer with us, but Charles White's birthday was also, it will also be on April 2nd. And who's next? We have so many birthdays.
So many birthdays.
And next week we have like none.
Oh, is that true?
Well, we have like one.
I think we have one.
You know who's going to love next week's birthday? Ben. You're going to love the birthday we got for next week. That's going to be up your alley. Okay. So this guy is Andrei Tarkovsky, who happens to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Was directed by Tarkovsky. And I love his work. He's April 4th. Charles White's retrospective at MoMA was great. Yeah, I did not get to see that, and I wanted to see that. I did see something up on that. I should have mentioned that, actually. Thank you for that. So Tarkovsky, known for a number of really amazing films, my favorite of which is Andrei Rublev. And this is a scene from that movie. And he is what is he? He's April 4th. All right, I'm going to let you do the next one, okay?
Okay.
Here we go.
This is Ronit Baranga. We actually featured her on our Halloween episode. We did. And she does really awesome sculptures.
Real
very
creepy,
surreal
stuff.
Juxtapositions. Ceramics of animating inanimate objects and giving them humanistic qualities.
Yeah.
So it's her birthday as well.
Yeah. She is on the 4th as well. And then, of course, last but not least, and definitely not last, because we have 2 to follow this one.
Yes, we do.
But we have Fragonard. Love Fragonard.
I love Fragonard. My father did a copy of a young girl reading.
We talked about this. And
I
actually
talk about it every single time somebody brings up Fragonard because I feel like I grew up with that. I grew up with that image in the house. That's something I always go back to.
Well, I'd love to have this image in our house. I love this painting.
Yes, this is very, very lovely.
We brought up your dad's painting the last time we talked about Fragonard, and it was in relation to, I forget why we brought it up.
I believe Shonobare, that show, he also did a sculpture that emulated this very painting right here.
That's right.
With the woman on the swing, and that's kind of what reminded me of him doing that. But,
I remember that now.
Yeah, but...
All right, so those are our birthdays, and Fragonard is April 5th.
April 5th, French painter and printmaker. Very hedonistic.
Good stuff.
Yes, good stuff.
All right, let's see if I can get this to shut down. Now, there it goes. It's turning off. That's good. All right, so last but not least, before we go on to our actual featured artists tonight, and we suffer through more technical difficulties, as I'm sure we will probably have, I think.
We'll see.
We're going to talk about ways in which you can support us. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here on The Large Glass. We typically were exclusive to Twitch, and the Twitch community has been pretty good to us, but as some of you know, the Twitch community is primarily a very different kind of community, and we're trying to build a community. We're really about getting our message to you. So we're going to be regularly broadcasting across Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So, Twitch makes it very easy to support us through the subscription system or donation system. But as we begin to sort of diversify across these platforms, how do you do it? We're working on a Patreon support system where anybody who supports us through Patreon is going to get much better benefits than they get through Twitch. And it'll be a slow and gradual shift, so don't panic. But
don't panic, especially Carolyn there. Just extended my membership another 3 months.
Don't you worry.
That's
you worry,
okay.
because I'm telling you now, it doesn't matter. If you're over on Twitch side of things supporting us, we love that, and thank you for that. And everyone else who's out there supporting us on Twitch, thank you for that. What we're doing by doing this is giving more people the opportunity to come to us and hopefully, get involved if they can. All right. So should we get on with the artists?
We can get on with the artists.
All right. I got to manually turn these guys on because I am not sure what happened before. But
and when we were thinking about this show, it was... I usually have an interesting connection with numbers, and I was noticing, as we said, that our 30th episode was on the 30th of March, and 2 major painters were born on this very day. So typically we feature contemporary artists, and that's fantastic. I love looking at new art. I love up-and-coming artists and seeing what's out there, but sometimes it's really important to go back to our roots, and I felt like today was a good opportunity to do that. So we're going to honor 2 painters who are very famous, who've really had great influence on art
firmly
for
nested
hundreds of years.
Firmly nested in the canon of art history.
Yes, today on March 30th.
Yes, so we have Goya, Francisco Goya, and Vincent van Gogh.
Both born on this day.
Correct.
Yes.
And we're going to take a different tack than one might typically take with these 2 artists, because with Goya, there's a lot of paintings you would expect us to show if we were going to feature Goya. With Van Gogh, there's also a number of paintings you'd expect us to show, and we'll show some of them.
Yeah.
But we're really going to focus on the portraits.
We are.
Yeah. And one of the things I loved, so I had some pushback for Terri when she said, let's do Goya and Van Gogh. And I was like, come on, we've been talking about all these contemporary people. Why are we going to go backwards? But I will say this. In preparing for this show all week, and primarily in the last 2 or 3 days, I've really been revisiting a lot of things I missed, I've forgotten about.
Yeah.
And it was really satisfying going through this stuff and putting this particular show together. I really liked it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Goya because he's older. He came first in the two that we're featuring tonight.
Yep.
And I think what we'll do is we'll try and draw some correlations between the two. But I think those correlations for me are going to be more mired in how I might take them now, given the current situation and the way things are, and as an artist. So Carolyn's like, why not? I know, why not? Exactly.
Why not?
No, look, both of us we like dig our heels in sometimes about some of these things, and
Well, I think it's important to look back, and like I said, we find new perspectives sometimes when
totally
we
agree.
dive back into things. So portraits aren't something that they're typically known for either. We think of a couple portraits here and there, but by examining their portraits, it's kind of like we're making portraits of them as well.
True.
So Francisco Goya was born on March 30th in 1746. He is an old master.
He's also can I interrupt? Am I allowed to say something?
Yeah, but I think you're going to say what I'm going to say. But
Go.
you go ahead and say it.
All right, I'll say something completely different.
Maybe I'll finish it. Go ahead.
No, you finish. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something, and now I'll shift and just to complete a thought. This guy lived a long time.
He did.
For the 1700s, he lived to be 84 years old.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
He did.
All right, now you say what you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say one of the quotes that you keep finding is that he's one of the last of the old masters, but one of the first new moderns.
Of the new masters, for sure. He kind of bridges two periods, and you actually see him through this progression move into a more modernistic approach to painting. And there's reasons for that we think we can sort of get at. But you want to talk a little bit about his...
I certainly can. He was born to a lower middle class family. His father was a gilder who focused on religious and decorative arts. He had wanted to go into art from a very early period. When he was 14 years old, he started apprenticeships and learning from a couple of painters. He had several applications out to a couple of different learning institutions, but he was rejected several times.
Yeah.
And when he was about somewhere in his teens, they sponsored a trip for him to go over to Italy.
Right.
Like he had raised the money himself because he was not able to get into an art program.
That's
so
right.
He went over there and started studying. During that time, I mean, he's had a lot of romantic stories around him and what he did when he was growing up and how he got into the art world. There's stories about him like running away with bullfighters and getting immersed in some of the culture and becoming a street acrobat and acrobatist, I think. So there were all these really cool stories of him.
Well, he had a fantastic life force in him. He was a very sort of energetic person that had his feet in a lot of different places. And it's no wonder that he wound up as a court painter when he started to find some success, because he had the gregarious nature and the personality.
He did, but he also had a connection.
Right. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, the woman he married, her brother was already involved in that society.
Right.
So he kind of had him as a connection that got him into the more aristocratic.
Right. And when he went, I want to change this. I'm gonna flip screens for a second so you can see this a little bit larger. And unfortunately, the image I have has just a hint of yellow green in it, so it's going to be messed with the green screen a little bit. But this was the best image I could find, but I can make it bigger. So give me a second and I'll just pop over to that. So here it is a little bit larger. This was as he began painting royalty as a court painter. So when we talk about these portrait paintings from these people, I mean, if we know Goya, like if we start looking at the images that Goya typically drew or painted. Am I taking something out of your mouth again?
Nope.
No?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, you're looking at me like, stop. If we look at those images, Goya seemed to have a real connection to people. He had a real connection to, he was a very democratic painter. Like he really understood the struggles of life. He really understood the anguish of people. He portrayed that beautifully in his drawings. And this might be one of the reasons why he's considered such an early modernist, is because that subject matter sort of reigned higher necessarily than the pictorial depiction of those things, right? You know, brushstroke and mark making was allowed to sort of appear as part of that angst or that anxiety. But I'm kind of running away with this, so I want to give you a chance to talk about, let me go back to that image. So you want to talk about this one?
Well, we can talk about this one. So we're building up to this one. So he married Josefa, and her brother was involved in the court. In 1765, he had a membership of the Real Academy de Bellas Artes de San Fernando, and he was appointed a directorship of the tapestry works, and that's when he first started getting into the royal court in painting. So, and then his resume just kind of built upon that throughout the years. He gets higher and higher appointments. So this painting right here is actually of a family, and when he paints portraits, as Todd was saying, it's just not a bunch of stuffy paintings, although we see them as some stuffy paintings.
Yeah.
He starts getting into some caricature, even though he was trying to flatter the people that he was portraying. Sometimes he had like a little bit of a barb in there.
Want to see one?
Yes, absolutely. This one's a good one. So this is King Ferdinand VII. This was one of the ones he painted. There was another one with a robe. I don't know if you saw that one.
I did, and that one actually kept coming up as I couldn't get the right file format. So what I did to replace that is, since his face is so small, I got a detail of his face, so you can really capture that kind of that little subtle jab I think he's taking.
Yeah, and the expression.
Right, but it's kind of like this. There's kind of a. Somebody described it in what I was reading as their faces are sort of like these potatoes.
Yes, a little bit.
And I'm going to pop to a larger version of that, actually, so that you guys can see that a little bit better. Take a look at this. So, you know, while this is a likeness of King Ferdinand, it's certainly not the most flattering.
Yeah. People were saying that he didn't really care for him very much. The other thing that he would do is, even with his body and body distortion, like he purposefully softened out the shoulders so that he didn't have any.
Right.
And
made him seem a little wimpy.
So he did little barbs here and there if he didn't like the person. Ben's got a couple things here. I'm just loving these work, how he uses those colors.
Memory Vessel says S. Eric.
Huh. Autocorrect, smirk.
Smirk,
yes,
oh.
Exactly.
Like, who's S.
And
Eric?
the expressions come through and how he portrays the people. Going back to Charles IV of Spain and his family, which was the image that we saw prior to this, they had pointed out a couple things in that portrait.
You're talking about this one?
Because it's almost like an assemblage of people, and we have the king here, but if you notice, he's not in the center of the painting. Who's in the center of the painting?
Yeah.
His wife.
His wife.
So you see different representations of relationships going on, and he kind of portrayed them in a way. There was another rumor, like, Goya is actually featured in this painting. All the way on the left and behind, you see a gentleman painting on a canvas behind the two younger boys.
I'm trying to zoom it in so we can see it.
That's Goya over there. The two boys in front of him are the sons of his wife, and they're supposed to be the sons of King Charles as well, but it's questionable as to whether they are. So he was doing all these things with paintings, like he's turning somebody away. So very, very interesting.
It's a little bit of a risque side to all of this, which I kind of enjoy, actually.
Well, that was something that they were remarking on too. But
are we going to talk about that later, or can we talk about that now? Because there is that painting with the inscription in the sand that says,
the Duchess.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
You're like, please don't talk, Todd.
No, that's okay.
She's like, Goya's mine. All right, so can we get past Ferdinand?
Yeah, you can get past.
All right,
Ferdinand.
so past Ferdinand,
We have the Duchess of Alba.
Duchess of Alba.
Now, this was a woman that Goya painted over and over again. He was a muse. It's rumored that they had an affair. He painted her in white. He painted her in black. By all accounts, she wasn't a very pretty woman. That's what they were saying. But I think it's a beautiful painting and whatnot. I don't have much to say about the Duchess in white. The Duchess
We got the Duchess in black. We've got Duchess in black.
At.
Yeah, it's where it's at.
Yeah.
Here she is.
There she is.
I got two of her. There's two different Duchess in black.
Yeah.
So
that's the more risque one, a little bit scandalous.
Right.
And he does really great detail work with the finery and the expression. Her hand, which is heavily jeweled, is pointing down at the ground, and her feet are turned in a really haughty, confronting way. And down on the earth, there's an inscription
that says "Forever Goya."
Yes.
I don't have a close-up of that.
Okay.
But this was painted after Ferdinand just had died.
Yes.
And Goya saw himself as the next logical person in line to be with her. And inscribes in the sand in the painting "Forever Goya," not forever, only Goya.
Only Goya.
Solo Goya.
Yes.
Right. So it's only Goya, as if he's the only thing that she could possibly want at this point. So it's rumored that they might have been together. It's rumored that they might have a child together. But then there's equal amount of information on the other side of that coin that says this was really Goya's fantasy and that she was not really interested in him in that way. They did spend a lot of time together after Ferdinand's death, and she cared for him very much, but possibly not in that way.
Right.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. And
that is an interesting thing.
And then there's the less risque Alba in black.
Yes. She looks a little older here.
She does, but she's not.
Okay.
I think she's painted less flattering in a sort of more intentional kind of way. I'm really interested, though, as we get past that phase of the court painting and we start getting into some of the really gritty, modernistic kind of approaches to things. And I think we're starting to sort of, we can see little hints, maybe not necessarily in this one, but I've thrown a few portraits in there to kind of like lead us out into the water. And she is pointing down at the text. Yeah, I know, Spider. That's actually really good to notice. Of course, was she really pointing down, or did Goya make her point down, right? So,
There's a couple more comments
Ron
there.
says, I love when artists take jabs at their subjects. The
Yeah.
Sistine Chapel has some hidden jabs in it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Christina, you're saying the little one with the red pants. I have, you're talking about the little boy with the bird and the cats, the little magpie. I'm not sure if you're talking about that one, but I have that one in here. There's Splonk 16. Hello, Splonk. Love the lace.
Yeah.
But check out how things change. And this is an actual real interesting transformation to me in the way that this shawl is painted. Her face, the detail in her face is as it should be. The headscarf, a little bit more brushstrokey, and the scarf itself is almost hurried. It feels like now that sort of need to hide or perfect the detail is sort of beginning to evaporate a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more of a freedom in the way he's painting these and the way he's handling his subjects, which is interesting to think about just in terms of the time. Do you happen to recall, because I don't have the date in front of me, approximately what year it was that the court paintings, I know he died in 1846?
1828.
1828,
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
He was born in 1746.
The court paintings pretty much were from 1799 all the way through until about right before 1819. 1819 is when he started his black painting series. And that's not really about the portraits. He was kind of isolated a little bit.
Well, Dave Schmidt just gifted a tier 1 sub. That's awesome. It's a memory vessel. Aww. Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. 1821, actually in the 1820s, there was a significant, I've done a lot of work around the notion of technology and how technology changed painting. Now we say, well, what do you mean technology? I mean, it's not like they were sitting in front of a computer, but technology spanned a number of areas, going back. And one of those areas was in the area of photography.
Yep.
Were you going to bring that up?
No, I'm agreeing.
So in the 1820s, the photography begins to come into the world, right? And so we see some of the first cameras taking pictures. Now, if a camera can take a picture of a thing, a person standing there, why do we need a portrait painter? Well, the portrait painter now, or the painter on any level, now has a job to do, now has to shift gears. Technology forces a change upon the genre. There's also the technology of color, the technology of how paints were made, right? And chemists throughout history, even from as far back as like the Egyptians. I mean, there was a time when anything dyed purple was worth more than gold.
Wow.
Because the chemistry involved in getting that purple was near impossible. So even into the 1800s and the 1900s, and even now, but not so much now, different types and colors of paint, different formulas of paint were being invented, and you can look at the way painting changes throughout time. Now, Goya wasn't very interested in color, believe it or not. He said, I don't really have much use for color. I see through tones, right? But we'll get into that a little bit more when we get to Van Gogh. What about Goya going deaf?
Well, they're not 100% sure how that happened. They're speculating that he acquired Meniere's disease, and it was accompanied by a couple of different symptoms. He lost his hearing, he had bouts of vertigo. It really changed his personality as well. He kind of drew more inside of himself. He was very much afraid of going insane because he was, I guess, developing some traits along the way of doing that. But him losing his hearing actually made him more in a tune with portraiture, because it was a way to connect, because he was losing one of his major senses, and that was how he drew closer to people.
I love that you just said that about a way to connect. You know, Robert Hughes, the art critic who wrote a book on Goya, he said that Goya was the greatest portrait painter of all time, number one. Number two, he said, and I'm going to try and get this right, he said he was the greatest topographer of the human face of all time. And there's, we haven't gotten to Van Gogh yet, and I really wish we were kind of going A-B on this and going back and forth between Van Gogh and Goya, because I want to draw some really interesting contrasts to the preconceived notions we have about Van Gogh, number one. And number two, I want to sort of look at the differences between the way those two artists connected with their subjects. Because I really feel like Goya, who, I feel like Goya really did a much better job of connecting with the people and was less interested in the paint. And that's why the modernistic kind of stroke, the texture, the need to be not hiding things, just kind of like lifted. Because for him, he wanted to connect. With Van Gogh, it's very different, and in a way that I think is mildly controversial. I hate username 67 Velasquez. Hold my beer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but that's for a different show. I don't have any Velasquez slides in the carousel. So, all right. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, that was it.
I'm terrible about that.
It's interesting what you're saying about the faces and connecting. I don't know if you pulled up that Jeremy Paxman video that I had mentioned.
I don't think I might have.
Okay.
Oh, you mean to watch tonight?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No, I didn't do that.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, in that video, the National Gallery in the UK had a large exhibition back in 2016 featuring the portraits of Goya. And there was a gentleman named Jeremy Paxman who was going through, it's a good video. It's about 4 minutes long or so, but he was going through some of these portraits that we're talking about tonight. And one of them, I can't remember who it was a portrait of, but as Goya progressed through his career, and what you're saying about his faces, and the detail in the faces was a little bit more of what he focused on rather than the clothing. And this was a highly decorated military person, and you can even see he kind of got a little bit more gestural with painting some of the awards and the medals and stuff, and his face was very much more in detail. But one thing I noticed that he did, and it would be really neat to have that right now, but the eyes, there was almost a a lack of focus in the brushstroke that made you focus more. It made it seem more lively. It had like a vibrance to it because it wasn't as well defined as you would think. And I was like, wow, it almost feels like this gentleman was moving in the painting because of the way he painted.
And this is what painters of that time, and maybe not painters of that time, but Goya specifically, and then painters that would come later, were starting to discover about what paint could do, that the camera could not do. The camera recorded what was there, and that was the old job of the painter. Now the new job of the painter is to show us what's not there, right? And that's what that brushstroke can do. That's what that gestural mark can do. And some of these painters were fabulous at it.
Yes.
Let's talk about this one, because I've got the other one behind it stacked up.
Okay, so I don't know this version because it's not the dirty one.
Well, the dirty ones, this was the clothed version.
This is the clothed version.
Maja, the clothed Maja.
The Maja.
I'm going to pull that up on the big screen. Let me go to the main screen for 1 second, and then I'm going to pull that up here so you can see that it's a clothed Maja
version. And then, so...
Do you want me to talk about it a little bit?
No, I can talk about this. There was, back in 1799, Goya was the prime court painter, and one of the gentlemen who was also working there, who was actually the first Secretary of State and the Prime Minister of Spain, known as the Prince of Peace, because of these negotiations he was helping out with, creating diplomacy and negotiating with Napoleon. Godoy commissioned La Maja Desnuda, that I'm going to butcher. Did I say that correctly?
I think it was pretty good.
La Maja.
Maja Desnuda.
Thank you. But he commissioned the painting. So he wanted the painting, he wanted it nude.
And to be clear, having a nude in a painting was nothing new. But typically they were allegorical, or they related to some kind of...
Are you going to say why this one was different?
Yeah, I was going to. But
okay. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, this was a common folk woman who was not normally portrayed this way, right? And so it was a little bit risque.
Scandal.
And the reason it's scandalous is because they couldn't figure out why he would do such a thing. Like, why do you give us that?
Yes.
And here she is. And Twitch and Facebook all shut us down. Oh my gosh.
Oh, because we showed that?
Probably. I don't know. All of a sudden we're off the air. These painters would have had their head explode with the internet.
This was the original version, which brought a lot of controversy. I'm going to say it. It's one of the first nude paintings with pubic hair. I'm going to say that.
Oh, you want me to throw that in there?
I'm going to throw that in there. But that's one of the reasons why it was so controversial before this. They weren't painting nudes with that element.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons.
Huh. I love that. All right, let's get back to here. So you've got the clothed version.
The clothed version.
And the nude version. All right, let's go to the nude version real quick, and let's keep going. Okay, so this one hung in my house. My grandmother had this painting on her wall. Probably not the original, because I don't think we were that kind of family. But this little boy always creeped me out. Were the clothes painted over?
No, it's a separate painting.
Two separate paintings, and you can see the expressions on the face are very different. I want to back up to them really quickly, because if you see this one, there's a much more alluring kind of gaze on her face.
I think that was the other thing too, her direct gaze.
This one, she is looking right at you, and her mouth kind of has a bit of a smirk. When I go back, this one is similar. It is similar. But you can see that there's a softer gaze in her eye here. And this one, it's sort of like maybe she's presuming that you're going to see her in the next slide the way you see her. But it's not quite as soft a gaze. It is slightly different. So, but if you study it for a little while, you can see it. Now I've got to make this small again. So if you don't mind, just give me a second. And this software, great. All right, let's move on to this one. You have anything to say about this one? I just threw it in here because it was on my grandmother's wall.
No, go ahead.
And I always felt bad for that little magpie bird that was being stared at by 3 hungry cats. And everybody's just sort of oblivious to the fact that that bird's about to die.
You think that bird's about to die?
I absolutely think that bird's about to die.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, the faces on those cats. So I love how there's a blank expression on the child's face. It's as if it doesn't even care. It doesn't even know. It's oblivious.
Well, I don't think the child has made that kind of connection between what can happen, like consequences. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
All right. Another self-portrait.
Another self-portrait. This was more mid-career. He painted a couple of self-portraits. The first one, which we saw,
like,
yeah, not as many as Van Gogh.
No,
I guess.
And by the way, it's 8:45. We got to get on to
we
Van
gotta
Gogh.
roll.
We
But
got to
anyway,
roll.
this is mid-career. Next.
Here's another one later in life.
There's another guy.
Right. Sorry, so just keep rolling through the slides, Todd. Just keep going.
This gives you an idea. He really captures the expression in the face. He really connected with the people that he was painting.
And then we get to hear.
This is one of his last self-portraits.
Yes.
He is featured here with a doctor
Who is helping him through a difficult illness. Mm-hmm. And you see things starting to get a little bit darker. You see some of the figures in the background that are sort of looming over the scene ominously in the darkness. Mm-hmm. There's sort of a disconnected gaze of the doctor who doesn't seem to be paying attention to what he's doing. The scene seems almost kind of desperate on some level. And so we see Goya sort of descending into, the later stages of life. And then it gets really dark.
So I don't think of this one as a portrait. And this painting,
portrait of Saturn.
Right, but when I think of portraits, this isn't somebody that he's trying to...
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Terri telling me I put the wrong slide in the carousel.
No, that's not it. This painting is one of the reasons why I didn't initially like Goya. This is one of the most disturbing paintings in art.
I agree. This is one of the most disturbing paintings in art.
Yeah, so this is Saturn devouring his son.
Yes, and it's a terrifying painting. It's absolutely terrifying, but it really does talk really deeply, I think, about where Goya was headed. Yeah,
he really kind of...
Oops, that's Vincent, sorry.
That's okay. Just to kind of close up the Goya chapter, what happened was 1807, war with France. Goya lost his hearing. He kind of went into seclusion. The war deeply affected him. He went into what's known as his black paintings, and this was one of the paintings that came out during that time. So he kind of went into a dark, dismal place thereafter.
Yeah, he was painting pictures of witch covens that were being sort of led by goat-headed men. Mm-hmm. One of the last paintings he painted was just this real abstract kind of almost completely minimalized landscape, and all there is the small head of a dog that appears to be just coming up out of a lake as if it's in distress. Mm-hmm. And you really, if you map all of these, it is really sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad to see him go from this, spirited, full of life painter who, had a sense of humor, a sense of beauty.
Yeah.
And go down. But he did live a very long time.
He lived a very, very long time. We've got some comments going on. Angus Ron, this is the one that made me like Goya.
I second Angus Ron's statement. I'm going to actually third that one. When I saw this painting, I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Maybe I was too young when I saw it.
Well, yeah. I mean, if, this probably isn't material for a kid to see.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, make sure that Alex isn't in the room. Anyway,
that is Goya.
All right, so Goya, let's move on. Let's quickly...
Happy birthday, Goya.
Happy birthday, Goya. Let's take a look at Vincent really quickly. Now, I did not try to do a chronological order with Vincent van Gogh's paintings.
I don't feel like you need to with him either. So Vincent van Gogh, he was born on March 30th, 1853. He was born about 25 to 30 years after Goya had passed away. And what you were saying with technology is on point, because we saw the camera come into play. Photography was coming, and that was one of the things that Van Gogh kept in the back of his mind when he did paintings. He didn't want to compete with cameras. He wanted to paint portraits,
right,
and use color and brush strokes to capture emotion and personality. So he approached portraits very differently.
Right. And I've got a lot to say about that, but just not right away. Okay. So you do see a lot of self-portraits in the Van Gogh, collection of works. And there's a number of reasons for this. One of which is that he was too poor to afford a model.
Yep.
And so he practiced on himself. And one of the reasons that you can see that he's practicing on himself is he goes, as you go through these self-portraits, he's got a pipe, he's got a hat, he's got a coat. He's trying on all these different props to test things out. And the brushwork, the color work, the various juxtapositions of colors, the simultaneous contrast that he's employing in different things changes radically. So if it's changing that radically from portrait to portrait, it feels almost like these are tests.
Yes.
So this is kind of one of the first ones
this
that kind
is
of...
the potato eaters? No.
Yes.
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 Oh, goodness. So this is the potato eaters. It's interesting that you pulled this one up. This is a portrait. This is a family, for sure.
It's one of the first ones that actually kind of got him some recognition. It's one of the first ones that sort of pushed him into really connecting with people through the paintings, right? So if you look at a lot of the stories from his life, he connected with people long before he struggled with painting for a long time, right? But his father, who was a minister, a vicar actually, and so he was sort of very heavily engaged in religious, ceremonial, also life in his family's town. He was a very well-known person, right? And so Vincent saw fit to do this himself. He actually became very interested in preaching to the downtrodden and the poor. And he connected with them very deeply. He actually wound up in a coal mining town preaching for a period of time. And he decided not to sleep in the priest's quarters, which were actually quite cozy.
Yeah.
And he slept on the floor with the coal miners.
Yeah, I believe he gave his room to someone who was homeless,
he did.
too. Yeah.
He did. So he really connected with people in a way that I feel Goya also did.
Yeah.
But I feel like that changes. And I don't want to say too much just yet. So one of the reasons I threw this in here also is because, isn't there something on the back of this?
On the back of this painting is one of his self-portraits, and he did this to save resources and money because he didn't have a lot. There were several of his paintings that had self-portraits on the back.
I have them in here.
Do you have them?
I don't have them next, but I have them as we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So it becomes evident when we find portraits of Vincent van Gogh on the backs of some of the paintings that were ultimately framed that he was practicing and he was saving resources. One thing I wanted to do, I think an interesting project would be to go through Vincent's entire collection of work and look and compare the date stamps on them as best you can to where he was at financially and when Theo was sending money to him. So his brother Theo, they had a very close relationship, and he supported him financially. Theo actually worked at a very, very well-known gallery in Paris. Vincent eventually moved to Paris to work in that gallery as well, but was terrible at the job. He would actually tell people flat out, "Don't buy that painting. That's a terrible painting." But he did follow in family members' footsteps, and while he preached like his father did and worked at the gallery like Theo did, ultimately he decided to lead a life where he would preach through image and paint. And Theo supported him. They loved each other deeply, deeply. I mean, they had a really beautiful relationship. And so, we look at a lot of Vincent van Gogh's portraits, and I also compared a lot of these to the writings that he was sending back and forth to his brother Theo, and was thinking a lot about how he talked about his paintings to his brother. And it's a really, really interesting subject, and I'm going to talk more about it, but I don't want to steamroll some of the things that you want to talk about with these. You're like, I don't want to talk about anything.
No, that's true.
So, was this one you wanted to talk about? Did you have this one on the list?
I don't believe
I was just
so.
grabbing as I could go.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All right, so one thing we often think about Vincent van Gogh, especially if we've seen the films, or especially if we've read any of the books that were written about him after like the 80s, is that Vincent van Gogh was a reclusive, insane, difficult person who didn't get along with anyone and was destitute. Okay. There's a lot that challenges that. Okay, so a recent movie, a somewhat recent movie by Julian Schnabel called At Eternity's Gate with Willem Dafoe playing the part of Vincent van Gogh. Absolutely gorgeous movie. And if you get a chance to see that, I highly recommend that film. But it does portray, it really borrows heavily off of the attack that Van Gogh had on Gauguin, his friend, the painter Gauguin. There was that scuffle that did happen, and shortly after that was when Vincent van Gogh cut off his ear.
Yes.
Right. But it takes that sort of persona of the angry, argumentative, violent, and mildly insane person, and it paints the entire picture of Vincent van Gogh's life around that. Now, Schnabel, as a director, sort of, here comes I hate username 67. I'd like to go on record in saying that I don't think Van Gogh cut off his own ear. I think in time it will be revealed that Gauguin did it.
You think so?
We used to think Van Gogh committed suicide, but now we know he was murdered.
True.
And I think this cliche with his ear is about to change too. I hate username 67. I couldn't agree with you more. I totally agree with you.
Maybe he was trying to protect them and never said that he cut his ear off.
That would make sense, especially in terms of
he loved him.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is, Schnabel's Schnabel's portrayal of Van Gogh when he was shot. The story goes that Van Gogh wandered off into a field, right? And that was in Auvergeoise, France, where he was spending a lot of time painting. He wandered off into a field with a loaded pistol and shot himself in the stomach. But Schnabel's take on that is that some kids came along that were walking through the field, and here's this funny old guy painting, and they might have gotten into a little bit of a tussle, and he got shot. And that Van Gogh lived for a couple of days after that and did not reveal that these kids actually shot him. He just kind of protected them.
Yeah.
That would have been the type of thing he had done.
Yeah.
So before we get too far into that, let's just keep going on some of these portraits because there's some other really interesting things going on in them. So this is the
family.
Yeah, the Roulin.
So Vincent van Gogh didn't have a lot of patrons of his artwork, but there were a couple. And this gentleman is Joseph Roulin, and he became a good friend of Van Gogh, but he hired him to do portraits of him and his family. So he was in the post office at the time, and he did several of him. My favorite one is the green one with the flowers. Do you have that one?
Yeah.
Oh, we will get there.
We have it. I can pull it
anyway.
up. Hang on, it's right. Oh, it's too far in.
That's okay. You're going to see all of our.
You're going to see all these because I'm going to go through all of them.
Anyway, this is one of his portraits. He painted him, his wife. He painted his children, and they're just beautiful portraits that really rely on expression of the face and the colors and the way that they would interplay, and the skin tones. How he relied on contrasting colors and complementary colors and the brushstrokes.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. And I love that. So when you look at the letters, actually, John Park just popped a link into the chat that says this does make a good case for suicide. And I think the argument is going to go on, right?
Yeah.
I think I think it's interesting to read about both sides of this and think about it.
I don't think we're ever going to know.
We might.
So, you think so?
Yeah, I think technology could possibly reveal that. But what I was going to say was when you start looking at the letters that Vincent and Theo were writing back and forth to one another, Vincent always wrote about the paintings that he was working on. And he described the paintings that he was working on from the standpoint of color, texture, and brushstroke. Rarely, not exceptionally, but rarely did he talk about the people in those paintings in a way that felt connected. Now, there were women that he had crushes on or that he was in love with. There were men that he did not necessarily approve of. There were relationships with families that he knew and that he painted portraits of. And those are discussed and described in the letters. I'm not trying to say he never talked about people. What I am saying is that if you weigh the way in which he talked about the people versus the way in which he talked about the color, this was about painting for Vincent. This was not about people, right? And there was recently an exhibition that was conducted, or of his work that was shown of his work, that made this argument that Van Gogh was a fairly well-connected person who had a lot of friends and didn't have the depressed, miserable life that we think that he did. Okay, that may or may not be true. And there's plenty of evidence, I think, if you look at it, depending on how you look at it. But I think ultimately, for Vincent, it was really about painting and paint versus about whether or not he had people or no people. And I think that makes a big difference. I think that really says a lot about how he begins to develop his impressionistic use of color, how he understands, if you start looking at some of Vincent's other paintings, then not the portraits, like the cafe, he uses color in a way that's repulsive intentionally.
Yeah.
And so he's getting at the inner workings of his subjects with a brilliant understanding of color. Now I'm going to let you talk because I will not shut up. You're like, I don't know.
No, that's fine. The photo or the image that we saw prior to this was one of the doctors who treated him, and he painted him and his family as well. There's a couple versions of this portrait here. Yeah,
I was only able to actually, I did see the other ones of this one, but again, it's sometimes pulling in images.
Yeah, it's hard with the size and...
Pinterest ruined a lot of things for the world.
Did it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. I'm not going to go on a rant about that right now. But, so yeah, I think that, when there is this really interesting way to look at these paintings through that lens of what's the connection, and is it more about the paint than it is about the person?
This is his mother. He painted this one from a photograph.
Because he wasn't around her very much.
He wasn't around her very much. I believe there's only one other painting that has her in it. It's more of a pastoral scene with his sister.
So to read some comments, Memory Vessel says, cliche, I know, but I do love the texture of Van Gogh's brushstrokes, so much energy. Yeah, no, absolutely. That can't be denied. And, he wanted to bring this subject matter to people in a way that hadn't been done before. I mean, one of the things, he ran around with all the Impressionists.
Yes.
Like he knew them. But one of the things that bothered him immensely about them is that they only painted on sunny days.
Yeah.
It really pissed him off that when it rained, they just went and drank.
They went and drank.
He went into his studio and worked.
I think that that's good too. Sometimes you have to refuel yourself. It can't be all the time.
Wait a minute. It says, I've always been in awe of his use of color, a master colorist. Then Angus Ron says, that's fine. Look out, Todd. Wait a minute. I must have missed something. Ben says, beautiful. Ron, clarify, please.
So I like going back to Van Gogh a couple years ago. And when I say a couple, how time starts blurring when you're getting older. So a couple years ago, it's probably more like 10 years ago, but the Philadelphia Museum of Art had a retrospective on his pieces, and they presented it in such a gorgeous way. We all think of Van Gogh. We're all like, oh, Van Gogh. And they started it when you walked into the exhibition, and it was around my birthday too that I had gone in there. We went for my birthday, and when we went in there, you're presented with all these beautiful images that he created throughout the span of his lifetime, but it was linear, so you could feel what he was going through, and you can feel the frenzy of his brushstrokes pick up as you got towards the center and towards the end of his show, and you got to see all these gorgeous images. And I just remember the one painting that they ended the show with that he had painted from the insane asylum window called Rain. And you don't think of that being incredibly enticing, but just the way the color struck you and the way that the rain was coming down, you felt the painting. And that's the one thing I think we all relate to. We can all feel his work. Right. And I think that's why it is so successful, and I think that's why it withstands time, and it's something that we just want to keep revisiting. Right.
No, I totally agree. And, I have a similar connection with Van Gogh's work, actually. And when I was in Auvergne-Gerroise, I cannot pronounce that, but I went to the town where he died. And they have done such a good job in this beautiful little French town of marking the places where he stood and painted. So throughout the town, there are these very, very large wooden placard signs that have, plexiglass covering over a beautiful image of the painting that was painted right from that spot. You can stand up and look at the church. You can stand and look at the field where the crows were flying. And there's all the information about it, and you can stand right in the spot where he painted. Now, of course, you're in town walking about, and you're looking for that spot. Where was he shot? Where was he shot? Where did that happen? And so you have to actually walk up this little double track road out of town through essentially the woods, right? And you emerge into this series of fields, and there it is. There out in the middle of the field is this other placard. It's like, here's where he stood. And then you stand and you look at the field, and you look at the way that field meets the sky.
Yeah.
And that is the spot where those crows were flying, where he completed that painting.
Oh my gosh.
And where he actually did either get shot or shot himself. Now, at that very spot, you can take a right-hand turn and begin walking down a plow road, looks like almost a road that tractors would use between the fields. And about 300 yards or so down that road is the cemetery where he and Theo are buried. And it's like, oh my God.
And you said that they died pretty close together.
I believe they died within a year of one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, if you can ever go to France, that is the place to go. I loved that tour. It wasn't a tour. It wasn't a formal tour. I walked around myself. I had a sketchbook. And, you kind of know where to go. It kind of is, there's a map. You can get a map. But really quite good. All right, so let's see what's going on in the chat. Imagine a dinner conversation between Van Gogh and Albers. Oh, wow. Well, Albers would first of all probably be honored, and Van Gogh would probably be like, what the hell did you do? But from a color relation standpoint, that would be quite interesting,
crazy.
Right? Pumpkin Audrey says, love all the contemporary artists need to do a dead guys. Need to do the dead guys.
Which is what we're doing tonight.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. When Terry said, that's fine, I might not be fine.
Yes.
When we were talking a lot. Oh.
The language. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you caught that, huh? Good job, Ron. You're tuned in, buddy. Christina says, I would get chills if I was in the same town spot where he painted. Oh, go. It's so awesome. Go. I love the smoky pipe with the orange colors in the back. You can feel the texture of the hair of his hat. Yeah.
Yeah, he really can.
He really, sure. When you paint impasto like that, when you're really thickening up that paint, there's an automatic texture, right? But then when you start getting into some of the simultaneous contrast is basically this notion that two colors, when placed next to each other, will have an effect on one another that pulls them outside of the norm, right? So we know this best when we sort of think about complementary colors like red and green. If you put red and green directly, fully saturated red and green next to each other, you wind up with an intensification of the red and the green. So they no longer are the original red and green that they once were. So that's simultaneous contrast. And it happens with more than the complementary colors. So what Van Gogh and the other Impressionist painters were doing was they were thinking about the science of color. They were thinking about color theory. Think about Seurat, right? Seurat's
pointillism, yeah.
Yeah, where he's actually using dots of colored paint. And when you back away from that, or if you can't get that, look at your television. Go get a magnifying glass and put it up to your TV. It's a whole bunch of dots that are all either red, green, or blue, and they all blend together to make these colors. So we know that the primaries of light, which is what's emanating through the screen you're looking at us right now on, are able to create all colors. And the painters of the 1800s figured this out. It was brilliant work. They were like, okay, we're going to do something that the camera cannot do.
Memory Vessel says, I thought that was optical vibration.
Well, it is optical vibration, yeah. But another term for that is simultaneous contrast. I heard that his atmospheric paint strokes are actually what the atmospheric air currents actually look like. Yes, if you have had enough absinthe in your system, you can see the air currents, and that's what they were painting. That's a joke.
It's hard to tell when he's joking. You almost pulled that one off.
But Angus Ron is saying almost like he had a different way of seeing, and that is not a joke, because
right.
that's really quite true.
Yeah.
I think that I think that Vincent had a way of seeing the world that had a real, I think he was connected to the world in a stronger way than most of us are. He had a gift for seeing things differently than most people. And that's what that's about.
Right.
That's what that's about. So the couple of the paintings that, obviously this is not a portrait. He did not go really abstract on us. This is one of those pieces that has a portrait on the back of it.
Bird's Nest.
Yeah.
And this does have a self-portrait on it. Yep. It's too bad we can't see them. I know
I tried to find
on the
them.
one video they were talking about, because there's the Van Gogh Museum. They put out a couple of educational videos, and they were talking about these paintings having the self-portrait on the back. They didn't feature any of them, so I'm like,
Yeah,
what
you
a
could not
tease.
find them. This is another one that
This
has a
another
portrait
one.
on the back of
This
it.
is still life with bottles and earthenware.
Right.
So yeah.
So
Yeah, and I'm sure there's more out there. You know what? I didn't write down this doctor's name. I know I sent it to you.
Yeah, you did send it to me. I could find it for you if you want.
Okay,
It might
but
take me a
this
second.
is one of the doctors that treated Vincent Van Gogh when he was having
when
an
he
episode.
was institutionalized.
Yeah.
Right.
And the story goes that he actually presented this painting to the doctor as a gift, and he refused it because he thought it was crazy. Like, because if you look at the hair, and I can't see the painting right now, but if you look at the hair, there's that red and green going on. There was the red background with the, I can't see it right now, so.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to find that thing for you. There it is.
Yeah, but you can see the undertones of the red and then the green, and the doctors back then, this was very revolutionary. So he had refused it. Then he offered it to, I think, an orderly who also refused it.
Right.
Or maybe the pharmacist. And then the third person, who I think actually was the orderly, I think he accepted it. So it was refused multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is Dr. Felix Ray.
Thank you.
Was the name. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, I think what a lot of people, this is one of the reasons why no one was selling paintings back then, right? Impressionists were not selling paintings. And the reason is because nobody really understood what was going on here.
Right.
And it's funny, sometimes you go into a gallery even now and you see challenging work. And it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around, which is one of the reasons why we do this show.
Yes.
Right? But back then it was no different. And so, this doctor had a really hard time with this. And I think Vincent even tried to explain to him the science of the color.
He did.
Because by this point, he's really starting to understand what makes and he used these words, what makes a good Impressionist painting. He said, this is a good Impressionist painting. So it's interesting to see him kind of understanding what the goal of Impressionist painting is, because a lot of the times we don't understand the movement we're in when we're in it. It's defined for us later.
Yes.
But it almost seems like they were much more goal-oriented in this way, which makes sense. But, don't pronounce the T. Thank you, Carolyn. Syrah. Syrah. Carolyn is here to help us with our French.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, Carolyn, my auvergeois I went and found the pronunciation for that because I've always had so much trouble with it. So correct me if I'm wrong. I would actually appreciate it. Almost like he had a different way of saying, oh yeah, we did say that already. Okay, good. What else do we have here? This is the one you wanted to show. Look at the flowers on the back of that.
I believe this is still in the family, the Roulin family.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
The Roulin family. I'm sorry I didn't get that in order for you.
Yeah,
I
that's
love this painting.
Yeah.
Oh, Memory Vessel just gifted a tier 1 sub to Angus Ron.
Very nice.
Look at that. The love is going around.
It's spreading around.
That's really sweet. That puts us at
16
subs. If we get to 25,
yeah,
we have a giveaway at
You have a
25 subs.
giveaway.
So keep the love train going.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Yep.
All right.
This is beautiful. Very decorative, too, with the stuff going on in the backgrounds.
Oh, thanks, Memory Vessel. That's really nice. That makes us feel good. Yeah. So, again, you want to talk about simultaneous contrast. Look at the color of that skirt. Look at the color of that carpet. Mm-hmm. Those two things are singing with one another. They are. And on top of that, I don't know if I can do this well enough, but let's see if I can zoom in a little bit is probably not a good enough image, but
Are we looking at the hands?
nope, we are going to look at that skirt. Now, you can see the brush strokes in that skirt, right? And if you could get close enough to that and under the right light, given that this is a digital image, it's probably not quite accurate. But I'm going to bet any amount of money that shadow work inside of that underpainting that's showing through in those brush strokes is a dark red, right? Because that's dark red living underneath that green is going to push that green up. I mean, that's basic painting. That's what we teach. Right? So that's simultaneous contrast, and that is a way to make colors actually work with one another the way they're supposed to. A big no-no oftentimes in painting is what we call local color, right? Yeah, she probably had a green skirt, and what color did Van Gogh pick for that skirt? Green. But that green is also infused with yellows and red and probably a little bit of purple because it's not just straight green. Mm-hmm. There's a life in that paint. It's not just about that brushstroke. It's about the choices he made and how they kind of... Are they rosary beads? No, they are not, Pumpkin Audrey. She's holding a rope that is attached to a cradle, and that's how she rocked the cradle. So he titled this one the Berceuse, and that was her cradle rocking device. Very Matisse-like. Next time I see you. Okay, good. Carolyn's going to give me some French lessons next time we get together. Good. All right, so how many more do we have here? We've got a few more. This one is popping.
Yeah, it really is. You can see a lot of those blues and oranges playing off in the flesh tones.
I put some of the later, much more impressionistic style mark making towards the end to kind of see how Van Gogh, through these portraits, really heightened that sense of life in the painting. I mean, we can talk about texture, and yes, that texture is there. You know, you see that background, and we're thinking the swirling stars of the starry night. Yes. However, you can also sort of think about the volume in the face. You can think about the figure-ground relationship, how that head, which is made up of a bunch of very similar marks to the background, seems to protrude from the background somehow, even with all that similarity. That's quite a feat.
It is.
You'd almost think it would camouflage him.
Yeah.
Right? So, let's see what we got.
We have some comments there.
And then we've got, you want to read them?
Yeah, John Park says the wallpaper is the best part of this for me. I think he was referring to 2 slides back.
Probably this one.
Guess.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely.
And Angus ran an article about Van Gogh's currents.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Just so you know, John, in a letter that Vincent wrote to Theo about this very painting, he really talked a lot about the wallpaper that was placed behind her. He was very proud of that. So that was probably his favorite part too, I would guess.
Yes, and then this is the other painting I was saying that has his mother in it. So we've seen both paintings that featured his mother, and his sister is also in this one as well.
I'm going to pull that up a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. But yeah, look at the way this shawl on that purple shawl, right, has those little bright pops of red color. The shawl next to that with the orange, if you were to look below that, you'd notice that not only are there blues under that orange, the complementary that would, relate to the shadow, but there are greens in there also, which very, very nicely contrasts that purple shawl. And he sets up a relationship between the paint, okay? A color relationship between the paint. Now, what is that doing? Well, it's enhancing the relationship between the two people, okay? So what that magnetism, that push-pull that's happening in the painterly marks and the science of the color is actually getting you to believe, hopefully, that those two figures have a relationship that you might not be able to see if this were painted in a more realistic fashion. And that's the job.
Yeah. I'm actually enjoying those really bright orange hues on like the knuckles of the sister and some of that paint coming through, like the sharper ones if you look on the skin. And just the underneath the umbrella there, you could see the tonal shift as well. Yep,
absolutely. Memory Vessel says more photographic feeling, less stylized. Yeah, true, but he's also sort of reining in the mark making, right? The mark making now is going more, to a more controlled, it seems like a more refined kind of way. The marks themselves are becoming smaller. There's a little bit of a hint of Seurat. I wonder if he had seen Seurat. I'm sorry, Carolyn, if he had seen Seurat at this point, right? That seems to be coming through to me. So, I think that's kind of, do we have one more after this? Yes, we do. Oh. And it's way too big. But again, look at the way those orange spots.
Vibrant that is.
Look at the vibrance.
It's really beautiful.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I would like to think that Vincent van Gogh was so in love with color and paint and figuring this out that all the rest of the world, the fights, the arguments, the aggression, and the unfortunate mental illness that he suffered were secondary to this. I mean, he was hospitalized and he was still painting.
Yes.
He cut off his ear, or if you're I Hate Username 67 and some other of us that think that could be challenged, someone cut off his ear, and he still painted. Mm-hmm. He still was. This was what he could do.
Yeah.
This is all. I think this was. He said, "I paint because it's all I can do."
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful.
Now, one last myth to bust for you. There's always the myth that Vincent van Gogh never sold a painting in his lifetime. Wrong. Theo did sell one of his paintings for him at the very gallery he worked at before his death. And Theo hoped that and the income from that would help to propel him into a new sense of purpose, something that would pull him out of the madness, something that would give him drive again. But he did, in fact, sell a painting in his lifetime while he was here. He did say, I don't know if this was lifted from a letter to Theo or if this was a line that was placed in there by Schnabel or the writers of At Eternity's Gate, but he said, I sometimes feel like I'm a painter for another time. I'd be curious to know where that came from, but that's one that really makes you like,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knew he was ahead of his time. Mm-hmm. And he didn't let what else was going on around him stop him. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
So, anything else you want to tell our lovely audience about this man before we sign off for the night?
I would like to say that his actual favorite portrait of himself wasn't by himself. One of his prized possessions was his portrait that was done by a John Peter Russell. And he had told his brother, Theo, please don't let anything happen to this painting. I love it. Mm. So that was interesting, that he was a master and he just loved this other painting him.
I'm so in love with what John Park just said. Here's what is odd to me. 15 years ago, this work felt old-fashioned to me, super flat, etc., in vogue. Now it feels less dated, oddly, or maybe it is just me. No, John, it is not just you. I actually feel the exact same way. And I think, I saw At Eternity's Gate when it was released. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. And then I watched the trailer for it this week as I was prepping for this, and I got choked up. I didn't cry during that movie, but I got choked up watching that trailer. Yeah. And I think it has to do with the isolation we felt. I think it has to do with how, for me, it has to do a lot with how I've changed over the last year, for sure. And this work to me now speaks to me in a completely different way. And it's not just about the imagery. It's about knowing where it came from. And another thing that probably is poignant in that is when I was young, my first exposure to any kind of fine art whatsoever. I had never been to a museum. I had never been to a gallery. But a good friend of the family's took me to the Met in New York. It was the first time I'd ever been there to see the retrospective of Vincent van Gogh in Saint-Remy and Auvers. And then we went back and saw him again. So my first 2 shows, well, actually, that's kind of a lie. There was a Picasso show in between those 2 that we went and saw. But I saw Van Gogh, Picasso, Van Gogh. So those are my 3 shows. So this, was my first exposure to things. I loved him.
Yeah.
Pumpkin Audrey just says, you are both passionate about, she says, you both are so passionate about both painters. Yeah. Yeah, we are.
I like doing this. I like going back a little bit.
The Wayback Machine?
The Wayback Machine.
What did you guys think? I mean, typically, you're all used to watching us, and we're really focused on contemporary stuff, but
I think once in a while it's
is this
nice,
okay once in a while that we go we take a time machine back and look at somebody? I mean, there's a few others I'd like to actually explore. I Hate Username 67. Another great Van Gogh movie is Vincent and Theo. It would be good to binge watch all. I agree. Yeah. That we could do. Amanda says, I love the history.
Yeah.
It's nice to
It's nice to
appreciate. So
appreciate.
who should we do? That's the question. Who should we do? What dead historical artist should we do?
Well, there's some more birthdays and stuff like that coming up, so we'll get there.
That's right. How can we understand today if we don't experience the past?
This is so true.
Agreed.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate all of you hanging out. I appreciate all those gifted subs, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And your support. We love that. We've got some really cool ideas for next week's show. Actually, we kind of know already who we're doing. I shouldn't say we're thinking about it. We're booked pretty far out. Like we're like the train is pulled out of the station.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Pumpkin Audrey says John Singer Sargent.
Oh, Pumpkin Audrey loves John Singer Sargent.
John Park says, this is my second time here. I loved both this week and last. It's going to be my Tuesday night jam. I'll Patreon you when you get set up. John, thank you so much. And thank you for your thoughtful comments. I mean, and everybody's, not that anybody's comments aren't thoughtful. Everybody's are. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't think this would be, this relies on you guys because the commentary and the discussion, that's the whole reason why we started this, is that we missed talking about it when the pandemic hit. And
and now we love talking about it even more than we did before.
Yeah, because now we know. We come here every Tuesday and you guys are here and we can talk.
Mom says, great show tonight. Thanks, Mom. Thanks for watching. Amanda Toulon says Salvador Dali.
Oh, that's a good one.
Angus Ron says, great show, you guys. Love you guys. We love you too. Thank you. Pumpkin Audrey says, thank you. Christina says, can't wait for my TNT t-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we got to do that. Well, they're already up. You can get them.
They are up.
You can get them. You can go to our website and order them. But we don't like to plug our
We haven't plugged
merch.
our merch. No.
I'll wear the hat next week.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And we will, wait a minute. We got a toast, right?
We have to toast.
We got a toast. Oh, wait a minute. Big screen. All right.
There you go.
I mess the technology up once in a while.
There's still comments.
I know, they're still flying in. Everybody's like, thank you. This is such a great show.
Like
and
we're trying to toast.
Everybody, yeah. We can toast.
That's awesome.
Guys, thanks so much. We will see you next week. Looking forward to it.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, let's find the thing. Ready?